All right, so we're really diving into a pivotal time for Lauren Cunningham and YWAM in this deep dive. We're talking New Zealand, beautiful harbor views, and Lauren spending a whole week in deep prayer and fasting. But this wasn't your typical spiritual retreat, was it?
Not at all. This was soul surgery, as Loren himself calls it. He wasn't just, making plans for YWAM's future. This was about confronting deep personal struggles. He even talks about uncovering some resentment he had towards his brother and even some past denominational leaders who'd questioned his vision.
Wow, it makes you think. You'd think someone so driven by this huge global vision would be operating on a purely spiritual level. But Lauren's journey reminds us that even the most passionate leaders have their own baggage, right?
Absolutely. And this soul surgery, it wasn't just about admitting these feelings. It was about actively seeking reconciliation. Like Lauren talks about writing letters to those he needed to make amends with, confronting those really difficult emotions head on. And it really makes you wonder, how often do our own unresolved conflicts hinder our own leadership or spiritual growth?
It's a powerful thought for sure. And this process of kind of clearing the air, seeking a clean heart, it seems directly tied to Lauren seeking God's guidance for YWAM's future, which leads us to the wise men principle, something that pops up again and again in YWAM's journey.
Right. The wise men principle, as you know, is this idea of receiving confirmation from God through multiple sources independently. So Lauren had been mentored directly by God, and so had Darlene, but he realized this model it wasn't scalable for the kind of global movement they envisioned. And it's so interesting to see how this realization, which came out of his own personal soul surgery, pushed him to seek a more structured approach to training and equipping others.
And that's where things get even more interesting, because it's not just Loren receiving guidance by himself. Thousands of miles away, Darlene's on her own journey, also fasting and praying.
And this is where their stories come together in Hawaii. Remember how Loren describes that reunion? The power of that shared revelation, both feeling independently guided to establish a YWAM training school. It's like their individual periods of seeking clarity were the setup for this united vision.
Yeah, it's almost as if they were two branches of the same tree, growing in different directions, but ultimately drawing nourishment from that same source. And this shared revelation, it unfolds against the backdrop of the blowhole in Hawaii. You can practically hear the waves crashing, feel the ocean spray as they brainstorm ideas for a school that emphasizes experiential learning and a floating faculty. That was pretty innovative for the time, wasn't it?
Absolutely. They were really stepping into uncharted territory. Even the environment itself seems to echo that sense of a raw potential, of something new and powerful about to be unleashed. But the key takeaway here is they don't rush out and announce it to the world. They wait, trusting that if this is really from God, He'll confirm it in His own way.
Which brings us to the unexpected arrival of Willard Cantillon, right? Lauren's still wrestling with this Switzerland idea, and then bam, he's having breakfast with his dad and Willard. Seems like a normal moment, but it becomes this huge turning point.
It's like this subtle confirmation woven into their everyday lives. And Willard's role is so interesting, right? He's very clear that he's just a messenger, simply confirming what God's already put on Lauren's heart. It emphasizes that this whole vision wasn't about personal ambition, but about stewardship, about yielding to something so much bigger than themselves.
And with that incredible confirmation, they're off to Switzerland, full of excitement for this next chapter,
Uh-huh.
Greeted by the beauty of Lake Geneva, those majestic Alps, it's like stepping right into a postcard.
And you can tell, you can just sense this beauty. It wasn't lost on them. It wasn't just about finding a meeting or writing a curriculum or whatever. It was about creating an environment where, surrounded by the grandeur of creation, young people could really encounter the God of that creation,
Yeah.
in a profound way. They wanted to create a space for others to go through the same depth of transformation they had.
Yeah. And they weren't afraid to make sacrifices to get there, were they? I mean, putting their own house up as collateral for a loan, talk about putting your money where your mouth is.
It really shows their faith, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They were all in, completely trusting that if this was really God's vision, He would provide. And you know what? He did. But not always how they might have expected. Remember when Loren's back in the States waiting for his daughter to be born, and he feels that sudden urge to call Darlene?
Oh, yeah. It's like a divine nudge at just the right time. And what does he find out?
The school has its first students.
Wow.
Darlene found them a place to stay, but
But
it used to be a restaurant, and it's totally empty.
talk about a leap of faith. But there's this beautiful parallel happening too, isn't there? This literal birth, their daughter Karen's arrival, happening right as the school is born. Both needing so much trust, so much surrender.
It makes you wonder.
And don't forget, Karen was breech.
Oh, wow.
Born just as Loren arrived after his flight was delayed. It makes you think maybe those challenging circumstances, they were all part of something bigger. A reminder that even when there's joy, when there's anticipation, life throws curveballs. But maybe those curveballs are chances for us to depend on God more, right?
That's a really interesting thought. Because throughout Loren's story and YWAM's journey, there's this constant theme. Facing the unexpected, needing to change course, adapt. It's like those challenges, those soul surgery moments, we're preparing them for how messy and unpredictable it is to start a global movement.
It's like they say, smooth seas don't make skilled sailors. Speaking of navigating those rough waters, though, let's talk about this other big story unfolding back in New Zealand. We've got Loren figuring out YWAM's future, Darlene getting the school and motherhood ready, and then there's Kalafi.
Kalafi, that charismatic Polynesian teenager who has such a profound impact on Loren. Remember how Loren describes him? A drinking, carousing troublemaker changed by the gospel. It's a classic story of redemption, but it goes even deeper than that.
Because Kalafi's story isn't just about his own transformation, it becomes the embodiment of that very principle of multiplication that Loren is wrestling with, right? This idea of raising up leaders from within every single nation, leaders equipped to reach their own people, that was YWAM's heart.
In Kalafi, he's like the poster child for that vision. He wasn't just a convert. He was a leader even before YWAM.
Yeah.
Remember how he led his classmates to Christ? It's like God was prepping him, setting the stage for a bigger role, one that went way beyond his immediate circle. And the timing of it all, it's uncanny, isn't it? Just as Loren's trying to figure out this model of multiplication, Kalafi steps forward, filled with passion and this burning desire to reach his home, Tonga, especially with the king's coronation coming up. Divine timing, for sure.
It's like all these different threads. Loren's personal growth, the school being confirmed, Kalafi becoming this leader, they're all starting to weave together into this incredible tapestry. God's faithfulness, his vision for YWAM. It makes you realize that while we might only see the big picture, the grand plan, God's working in the background. Those little encounters, those unexpected terms, that's how he tells. He creates something extraordinary. Makes you think about the bigger picture, huh? We're seeing the start of a movement, a family. It's beautifully messy, right? But at the core of it all, you've got these individual stories, these little moments that become springboards for incredible things.
Like the saying goes, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. Loren and Darlene, they weren't waiting for that perfect moment, the perfect plan. They were stepping out in faith, trusting God to meet them, Yeah. And that's powerful, man. That's for all of us, right? Whether we're called to start these big global movements or just be faithful right where we are.
Right. Good reminder that it's not just about the destination, but the journey too. And this whole wise men principle that's so central to YWAM, it really sticks with you. It's bigger than just, starting a school. It's about creating a culture of listening to God, seeking confirmation together.
It goes way beyond just one organization or time period, don't you think? Cultivating that sensitivity to God's voice in our own lives, realizing he often speaks through those whispers, those unexpected encounters, those confirmations we get through others. Makes you wonder, where are we being invited to listen more closely, to search for that kind of, communal discernment? Right?
Yeah, it's like Loren's story, it's unique, but it's universal too. It's unique in its impact, but universal in its message of surrender, obedience, and lining our lives up with God's purposes, even when things seem messy or uncertain.
It's a story that reminds us we're not just watching God's story unfold. We're part of it,
Yeah.
We're invited to co-create with him, to be his love and grace to a world that desperately needs it.
Well said. As we wrap up this deep dive into this incredible chapter in YWAM's story, this pivotal moment in understanding how these movements are born, I'm in awe of how God works, And honestly, I'm fired up to listen and obey like that in my own life.
Because it's not over, right? The story keeps going. Through YWAM, through countless others embracing that call to radical discipleship and global impact. Who knows? Maybe our own little acts of obedience today, they become something extraordinary tomorrow.
What a thought to end on. Until next time, everybody, keep diving deep, keep listening closely, and keep searching for those divine intersections, those places where what God wants and what sets our hearts on fire, they collide.